So would be taking profits on alts, and if I'm interested in shorts, I would be interested in shorts on altcoins, not precisely on Ethereum. But this is something I'm monitoring. And remember when we were bearish on Bitcoin dominance, you shouldn't be bearish on an asset or index that's dropping, right? You shouldn't be bearish on Bitcoin when it is at 75K. You know, this is where you get bullish on an index. This is where you get bearish on an index. Do you remember our streams in June? There were so many people calling for new highs on Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance is strong, altcoin's gonna suffer, this and that and this and that. What did we do? We anticipated divergences, right? 12-hour, daily. Look at this. Look at the aftermath. We were bearish on Bitcoin dominance here. We weren't bullish, right? Now, when everybody's bearish on Bitcoin dominance, I think now is the time to be bullish on it. If these divergences invalidate, yeah, okay, so be it, right? We come up with a new plan. That's it. But as long as they're valid, to me, Bitcoin dominance looks locally bottomed. Unless these divergences invalidate, then we come up with new plans. But this is one of the reasons why I'm not super interested in altcoins until we get a proper flush. But different analysis on ETH and BTC, different analysis on altcoins. And this does not necessarily mean that ETH and altcoins will suffer, right? Even if it plays out. This just means that they will lose relative strength. And let's say if Bitcoin reaches new highs, ETH and altcoins can still rise and Bitcoin dominance can rise. You know what I mean? But just something worth monitoring, because we have been, I would say, quite accurate here. And we will see if you're accurate here as well. I think it will take a few weeks to figure this out. And remember, this is the 3-day, right? So the next 3-day candle closes in 3 days. And then the next after that in 6 days, 9 days, 12 days. So you know what I mean? It can take 3 to 4 weeks for us to know if you're correct, right? Of course, lots of opportunities in between to trade the market. But this is just on higher time frames. I don't think we see new cycle highs, but the reset would be nice before considering lower levels. All right. Another thing that makes me a bit skeptical, and it's fine to be skeptical at the resistance level, right? We haven't been skeptical in any of the dips, especially corrections that we had, but it's fine to be skeptical and not be a victim of euphoria, which is at an all-time high. Sentiment is very, very positive. But to me, I mean, we're still at the resistance zone, higher time frame resistance zone for total 2. Really nice move. Most of this was Ethereum, not really altcoins. Our level worked pretty good at 1.34 trillion. Now, what's the next plan? We do have a 3-day bearish divergence here as well. Right, let's zoom in a bit. And yeah, initially, if you remember, we did speculate on a lower high for total 2, but we got a higher high, right? So Bitcoin dominance really took a bit to form that divergence. So we got a higher high on total 2, total 3. Got a bit higher than we expected, but this is still a 3-day divergence on total 2 at a big resistance zone. So what's the plan now? Do you want to bid this on the resistance and speculate that this resistance is going to break? You can. Is the risk higher? I think you can answer that for yourself, right? Of course, it can break out. In my view, and following my style, I usually wait for the breakout, let it run 10%, then it gives you a retest, and that's when you bid. Because if this breaks out, let's say, and it invalidates the 3-day divergence, and it starts rising, let's say 10%, or maybe 10%. Yeah, okay, 10%. It's not too much. 10, 15%. And then it gives you this retest. Can you imagine the comments on this pullback? Top is in, bull market is over. Do not bid, right? We're going into a bear market. But it's the same level we're trading in right now. You know what I mean? But this would be a very healthy pullback. Maybe it won't get as close to this. Maybe it front runs it, but would be a nice pullback, right? And it would be bidding the same zone as you would be bidding here, but it would be after breaking a key resistance zone and with a very or relatively easier invalidation, right? And you would know that this 3-day divergence is invalidated. As long as this 3-day divergence does not get invalidated, my big zone for bidding, yeah, of course, alerts here again, but we already got this retest. I don't think it's impossible that we still get at some point this 1.28 to 1.25 trillion. Would be amazing. And I don't think it would even need Ethereum to drop as much. It could be mostly altcoin driven. Of course, ETH would probably drop to 4,000, 3,900 that we just discussed. But I think altcoins would mostly suffer and bring this retest. If we get this, it's a big buy, higher time frame. Now, of course, as I said, market is super bullish, right? You can catch a lot of moves here. At higher time frame, I would set up some alerts here for this zone that we recently tested. But if this starts retracing, then this is the big zone. And you know, we've been talking about this for what? I think since here, right? Since July 12th. So for almost a month. Sometimes, especially on higher time frames, it just takes a lot of time before you get your big zones. But if we get this, you just bid. You just buy spot. You don't look for RSI resets, divergence. I think this is a very big zone. If not, then as I said, you wait for this. The altcoins dominance index is still a bit weak in my view. And it's a bit sad because you had Bitcoin dominance being so weak in the last few days and weeks, right? Which obviously reflected on ETH BTC, which was skyrocketing. But you have others' dominance basically not doing anything. And look at it on higher time frames, right? And this is why altcoins still remain relatively weak, and why I'm not really as interested in altcoins right now until we see some form of higher time frame change of structure for others' dominance and for others' BTC. Especially others' BTC is a really good one. This is not bad. Let me just set some alerts in this box. So 2.45 million. And then we look for triggers here. This looks a bit better than others' dominance. But long story short, still not super excited. Not super excited. I think it will come. The way ETH has been trading, I think we will see some altcoin rotation at some point. Maybe Q4, October, November. But for now, mostly interested in dips in Ethereum, maybe ETH beta plays, altcoins not so much. And if you look at the higher time frame structure of alts, I mean, of course, there's still some price action to develop, but most of them have been doing lower highs, right? Most of them have been doing lower highs. Could get a 3-day 3 drive. I've never seen that in my life. Look at how weak altcoins are. While ETH is quite stable. Fascinating. Well, okay. I mean, after reclaiming such a big level, I would be surprised if there was no interest in Ethereum, to be honest. So there's obviously the possibility that this doesn't get tagged now and just leaves everybody that's not in a position sideline. But it's a Monday, so not gonna rush into this, especially with that 4-hour bear div that we discussed. Here. So long story short, I think you get why I'm not super interested in altcoins, and I've said it last week as well when we discussed others' dominance. I'm not as interested yet. Of course, I like to trade them. Absolutely. But mid to long term exposure, not yet. Not yet. Others is also an interesting higher time frame and lower time frame chart, right? Still in this bear flag. We got another retest of these range highs right here, and we got the rejection, right? And the reason why we got a rejection is, first of all, obviously, also have been sending throughout the weekend. But second of all, if you're looking on more lower time frames and you just ignore this higher time frame bear flag, one thing that you notice is this. So we did reach some local resistance here, right? And at that local resistance, we did print a 4-hour bear div, right? 4-hour bear div means that there's a pretty big chance that we get a 4-hour RSI reset. For others, my big zone still remains at 250, 240. Will we get that? We shall see. But the other zones of interest would also be this zone, I think. 275 billion would give a nice RSI reset, would be a nice higher low as well, right? I think this would be good if we get a wick down here. Probably won't follow the trend line, but I think this would be really nice. But of course, higher time frame, as I've always said, 250, 240. If that ever comes, in my view, it's a big zone to be loading up on altcoins here. and then the invalidation is super easy. But just because this is a macro zone doesn't mean that I don't trade in between, right? Imagine it just comes down here to 275 and then just breaks out of this bear flag, and then you basically target 390 billion. So set an alert for 200 set an alert at 280, and if you get to this area, you can look for local triggers. But as I said, with how others' dominance looked like and how Bitcoin dominance looked like, it's very important to let some open interest flush on altcoins first, and to let these bearish divergences on altcoins play out. Okay, you might choose to ignore bearish divergences on ETH because you can say, fundamentally speaking, it's a bit different. It has different sources of capital. Altcoins don't have that, so personally not super interested in just ignoring these divergences. Very clear here. I think we also had one on Total 3, if I'm not completely mistaken. Yeah. Yeah, so last week we did talk about Total 3 here. And what we've basically said, I don't know if I said it on stream, but I brought this up in my corner and under fundamentals, is that I could see it rising a bit here until Bitcoin dominance forms that divergence. And that's exactly what we got. I think my target was even around 1.07. But we almost got this identical move, but then also formed a 4-hour bear div right here. My big zone of interest, if we get 275 billion for others, would be possibly here. 980, 970 would be really nice. More lower time frame. And then possibly at some point a move here. 1.13, 1.15 trillion for Total 3. So set an alert here, 980. This was pretty good. And if you're able to print a higher low here, would be really good structure-wise. What's your indicator for previous open? It's this one, Spaceman BTC. So just go here, type this up. It's the first one, and then it just automatically shows you all the important levels. Quite helpful if you, let's say, have a monthly open. Oh, look at this. Oh, nice. So 980 billion, we also have monthly open. See? Additional confluence. Apart from our POC levels. Can be really helpful if you have two confluences at the same level. So yeah, so basically that's the indicator. Yeah, I would. I mean, or FX, you know what I mean, right? I will keep buying altcoins, of course, but like I'm not super interested in being aggressive. Like when it comes to ETH, I wouldn't mind maybe trying a 5-minute bullish divergence because I know it's strong. I know it has reclaimed a very big higher time frame level, right? So that's what I mean. But with altcoins, I really want to make sure I bid the big levels. But look at alts, man. I mean, ETH is at 4,200, and I don't want to sound super bearish on alts because I know the rotation from ETH to alts will come, right? We've said it here. Maybe it's a bit too early, but it will come. But as of now, if you look at it, they're all printing lower highs with all the strength. Sui, Tau, Pepe. There might be a few exceptions. SPX. So really want to see these levels for total 2, the recent highs, and others being reclaimed. But with Bitcoin dominance and with the 3-day divergence on total 2, I want to see a flush first, or a pullback. Doesn't have to be a flush, you know what I mean? Can be just a pullback. Maybe even this is interesting. Higher low. So we shall see. Yeah, but definitely on a pullback, I will be interested in ETH. I will be interested in altcoins. But ETH looks way better than altcoins. ETH looks way better than altcoins. So what else do we got? We covered total 2, total 3 others. USDT dominance. Very simple. Very, very simple. We got our 4.50, 4.60 level right here. Nice catch. Led to all this move here. Right, so this came in alignment with total 3 and total 2. So what did we got here? Usually, whenever USDT dominance higher time frame bottomed, we had some form of higher time frame divergence, right? We talked about it before. Here, for example, we had a 3 drive on the daily. Here we had a bullish divergence on the daily. Here we did have a 12-hour bullish divergence, right? It did reset perfectly. So now we need some form of divergence to form here. Now you might say this can be a daily if it does something like this. A bit too wide, and look at the RSI. I mean, it went above 50, so I won't consider this a daily bullish divergence if it comes. So my only higher time frame level really remains here at 3.80, and I wouldn't be surprised if most of this drop, if it comes, most of these drops would be attributed to Bitcoin and Ethereum, and a bit less to altcoins. And that this would be the third time that these lows get tested. And then you know what's the drill, right? If you get to that level at some point, we wait for the breakdown and we better retest if it comes. So we shall see. Link. Let me just cover everything new, and then we can look at some charts that we discussed. I think that's from the macro side of things. To be honest, we have CPI and PPI tomorrow, right? Which can be a bit relevant for the short-term price action, depending on how the data comes in, right? I've shared my write-up in my corner. Basically, we expect CPI and PPI to come in higher than last month. And the only question is, will we get a 25 BPS rate cut in September or a 50 BPS rate cut in September? Right, because it's quite certain that we will get a 25 BPS rate cut. I don't think any form of inflation data can significantly alter that outcome. But the thing is that will we get a 25 BPS rate cut or a 50 BPS rate cut? And I think the CPI and PPI will heavily influence that, right? We do expect inflation to rise a bit again from month to month. If inflation data comes in below expectations, I think the market will heavily speculate on a 50 bps rate cut, and that can be quite bearish for the dollar, I think, which should be good for speculative assets. On the other hand, if we do get inflation data in line with expectations, should be neutral. Above expectations, I think it would be quite bullish for the dollar, and then we can have another retest of this 100 area. So that can lead to some volatility, and maybe if inflation data is bad, then it can accelerate these bearish divergences that we got if they're not invalidated until tomorrow. So that's something worth keeping an eye on. So until it goes all the way down, do you think we will not get a pullback? Are you referring to the dollar? Could specify that. Yeah, Vegeta. I think September. Pretty certain that we will get a rate cut. But in my view, most of that is somewhat priced in, because we have been expecting a rate cut in September for a few days and weeks, or at least we were anticipating that September is actually reasonable to speculate on a rate cut, which also explains the weakness of the dollar. USDT dominance, yeah, we shall see, right? We shall see. I think, I mean, it's a bit conflicting because you have a three-day bearish divergence on total 2, and then you have USDT dominance, not exactly on my big level yet, and not exactly showing signs of strength. What is the 4-hour saying? There's some lows here, but my big level is here. But as I said, wouldn't be surprised if this is just Bitcoin and Ethereum leading to all this way down. Doubt it will be attributed to altcoins. Why do we get a rate cut in September? Numbers not changed like inflation. I think the reason why we're speculating on a rate cut in September is because of recent employment data, right? So first of all, unemployment came in higher than expected, and some job numbers from previous months have also been revised, and those have been showing some weakness in the economy in the US. And then if you look at some other economic indicators like the ISM manufacturing data, it's also quite low, right? So productivity in manufacturing in the US seems a bit low these days. And I think that's the reason why the market has been speculating that the Federal Reserve could actually decide to cut interest rates by 25 bps this month to stabilize it a bit, right? It's not quantitative easing yet. It's still quantitative tightening, but like make it a bit easier for businesses to borrow money, although it's not a big difference. But what if you want an entry on BTC and ETH? As I said, I mean, you can be aggressive on ETH, or you can wait for a pullback. I mean, I'm not somebody who just enters breakouts, right? If it just breaks out here, I don't really care. I'll miss this move, because I want a valid setup. I just don't buy it at overbought. It's as simple as that. And I'm not really interested. I mean, this is what, a 3% move. I'm not interested in this. I wanted to find some form of top somewhere. Maybe it's a bit higher, maybe it's a bit lower, I don't know. And then have a valid setup to enter. And usually I enter on 30-minute or more higher time frame divergences. But as I said, this is the zone I want to bid. Previous monthly high PSC levels, 3,900. If I don't get it, I don't get it. It's not the end of the world. I don't personally feel FOMO or something. I did have a long from here, closed it around this level here, and now this is a new setup that is forming for me, a new higher time frame setup, right? As I said, a big higher time frame zone has been reclaimed. Now I wait for the price action to develop a bit. I don't care if I miss this. You know, if you caught it, very nice. Personally, for me, it's completely irrelevant because now I want to see some price action develop. I want to see potentially even a range form, right, for ETH, wherever that is, and then I'll just trade the range. I'm a fan of letting price action develop and then only then making more educated decisions. Everyone it doesn't matter if we get a rate cut. I don't think a rate cut will influence the price action in September. I don't think it's that important because market has been pricing in a rate cut for September. For all we know, all of this could be the market pricing in a rate cut in September. You know what I mean? And I mean, you know, we know that what Bitcoin has been doing this cycle with high interest rates. So if the Federal Reserve's actions would be that important in terms of timing the cycle top and bottom, I don't think Bitcoin would have pumped from 15K to 125. So yeah, I think it can be read, especially if we've been front running a rate cut. There's this myth in the crypto market that the moment Jerome Powell announces a rate cut, the market will do this. That's completely wrong in my view. That's not going to happen. Link, somebody asked me about Link. I actually like Link as well. I hate to say it because Link is always the last coin to really pump in an uptrend. But wait, I did have some interesting POCs for Link a bit earlier. I would bid Link here. This box. Here. If you get this 1940-ish to 19, I think it's a good bit. Maybe a wick down here, 1839, but I think this is a good zone. This is where I would bid Link for whoever asks me about it. Yeah, I do think as well that a rate cut, if it happens, I don't think it will be super relevant. And I've been discussing it in previous streams as well. I think the dollar will be unaffected from a rate cut decision in September because there has been so much selling pressure on the dollar, so much selling pressure in the last few weeks. And whenever a rate cut is announced, I think the dollar could even pump. If I'm completely honest. Just like in September, look at this. We got a 50 BPS rate cut here. That's quite a lot. And look what followed. Because all of this was pricing in rate cuts in September. We actually got the same scenario as last year. Exactly the same. A lot of short positions on the dollar in anticipation of a September rate cut. A lot of short positions on the dollar. Now here there are other macro indicators, macro developments that have led to a decline of the dollar. Of course, it's not only the anticipation of rate cuts. There are also some other things like tariffs or the big beautiful bill by Trump, right? But it's all past us. Tariffs have been priced in. The big beautiful bill is valid, is active, has been passed as well. So I think we could see something very, very similar. Then the delay could be there, the delayed effect of the dollar on speculative assets. So am I bullish or am I bearish? What do you guys think? Like, what do you sense out of my little presentation? Bearish? Bullish? No, I'm not asking about you living because you're always bullish. Dollar bull. No, I have to realistically assess something like ETH, right? You can't be bearish on this. Would be foolish of me to say, this is gonna be a deviation. If it is, we will see it, right? And we will short this. But this is the bullish reclaim for ETH. I think it can reach for its all-time high area, absolutely. Altcoins, yeah, you could say I'm a bit bearish because of the divergences on others and Total 2 and the bullish divergence on Bitcoin dominance, right? So a bit of a mixed feeling, and I think that's fine. Sometimes you don't have the clearest picture, right? But it's also part of the analysis if we say, hey, stick to Bitcoin and Ethereum on dips, on pullbacks. I think they're a bit safer to bid right now than altcoins. Or if you bid altcoins, make sure to take your profits consistently. And let's also not forget one thing, guys. I've promised not to bring this up every stream because it can be a bit confusing. But we still have these monthly divergences on something like Total 2, right? And it's not something I want to completely ignore, and I won't ignore. But this doesn't mean that we cannot trade in between. I mean, we did have a bearish divergence, but by the end of last month, and Ethereum pumped 20%, So that's why you just have this the back of your mind, but do not let this influence your decision making. You think LTC 3 drive plays out? Man, I hate the fact that they're pumping LTC and Link. I just hate it. Always these Dino coins pumping at the end. And I've heard on-chain is heating up as well, right? I'm not following that, but I think I saw Djib talking about on-chain getting heated somewhere. Will this 3 drive play out? I mean, it's still a pretty clear 3 drive. It's not something I would be buying personally. I think it's possible. Especially if Bitcoin dominance plays out the way we discussed it. But as I said, not super interested in shorting. Just because the market is a bit irrational. I hate it when the market is irrational. I personally, honestly prefer downtrends more than uptrends. And let me explain you why. To me, this was one of the most beautiful times. Was it this one or this one? Actually, both. This downtrend here and this downtrend here, to me, was a beauty of trading. So fun. Others up 25%, down 30%, up 25%. You know what I mean? You're downtrending, but you have these beautiful moves up and down. While when the market is uptrending, it's just going up. You know, for a trader, look at this. Just up, 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 up. This is a nightmare for a trader. Of course, if you're a holder, GG, lovely. But for a trader, I really prefer this over this. Market gets too irrational in uptrends. And then you need to be really aggressive in finding entries. But it depends on your style, right? It all depends on your style, I think. If you're a breakout trader, this is heaven. If you're a holder, this is heaven. If you're an intraday, intra-week trader, I think this is heaven. And like if you long and short, right? You don't really care if the market is going up or down. I think this is heaven. All right, I think we covered pretty much everything. Look at ETH, man. The bid is relentless. This is why I don't want to short something like ETH. I mean, ideally, in a rational market, this 4-hour divergence would instantly lead to a drop. Right? Look at this clean divergence and look at the bid since New York open. This is why I'm not interested in shorting ETH. And that's fine. I mean, there's more to the market than just technical analysis, right? We have to understand the dynamics leading to the move of ETH, right? Which is obviously ETF flows, retail interest. It's also corporations buying Ethereum. It's fine. You know, there are periods in the market where technical analysis helps you more. There are instances in the market where they help you less. One thing that I do know, though, is that all these ETF flows, you know what will happen. They will be the first to sell when the time comes. So being aware of that, I think, on higher time frames is quite helpful. Any thoughts about desync? You mean fundamentally, or like? Why is everybody so obsessed on desync, man? How do you write this? Desync? Is it this one? Probably because of Eli holding this, right? I mean, you need to understand one thing, guys. When time for on-chain comes, these things get silly, right? I don't know if this is the right one. If it's not, these things get silly. But just understand, they're all shitcoins. They're all narrative plays. They will catch up when ETH season comes, right? A lot of volume will come into them. But they won't be the future of finance. And as long as you understand that, you're fine. You put your money in, you wait for 100% move, 150% move, whatever. I'm personally not somebody interested in something like desync. I'm more into high caps. So maybe there are better traders to ask about something like this. Might want to attend DGIPS or Impulse's stream. But I've done a lot of fundamental analysis. I mean, if you've been along with me in Wealth Group in the past few months and years, you know I did a lot of fundamental analysis, and it's mostly vaporware, just thin air, guys. And then you have KOLs getting paid to shill these on-chain coins, and just remember that they get paid to do it. It's not like they actually believe in it. Just something worth noticing. Yeah, Muse. I mean, it is what it is. I could be sugarcoating it, right, and say desync or OXO or what's the new trendy thing in on-chain right now? They are the future of finance. They will replace Nvidia, but that's not the case. You know, all of these people go look at their websites. If you find one face at their website apart from like an external advisor, something like that, just come at me and I'll take everything back. But they hide behind an anonymous website, and there's always a reason why they do that. So play your little coinies and take profits when they pump. Forget about them. I have to wrap it up, unfortunately, guys, because I think there's... let me just check if there's another stream right after this. Just give me a second. I don't want to take anyone's time here. Oh no, actually no. DJIP is in a few hours, so I can stay a bit longer. All right. What do you think about Pepe? Pepe... I mean, it's a meme coin, right? The beautiful thing about meme coins is that we don't attach any fundamental expectations on them, right? Because it's a meme coin. We don't expect anything out of it. So that's the beauty of it. Meme coins don't lie to you guys. You know, they tell you, I'm a meme coin, I'm worthless, I don't do anything, buy me. And that's fine. They're not like these on-chain projects that, you know, build these fancy websites and tell you, you know, we're working on AI, we're gonna be the future of AI, watch us, we're gonna go mainstream. It's just false expectations. Memes don't do that. You know, so Pepe, my thought about Pepe is that it's a bit a beta meme play, right? It's been pumping a lot at the beginning of the cycle. It's been one of the best performers. And if you want to save bet for meme exposure, I don't think you do anything bad or wrong with Pepe. What I would really want to see is a reclaim of this zone here. And I think it's ready to send. So 0.14 reclaim, you bid a retest of this. But I think they're new and shinier meme coins. And the thing is that money always rotates with meme coins, right? You had last cycle you had Doge, you had Floki, you had Shiba. Nobody talks about Shiba anymore because then new meme coins emerged like Pepe, like Whiff, right? Which pumped last year, and now you have something like SPX or Fortcoin, right? Probably other meme coins as well, but I'm not super informed about the meme coin sector. But always, people will always look at the next best thing. But important to notice the higher time frame structure here for something like SPX. High, if this is a lower high, wouldn't be surprised to see something like this at some point. So just have that in mind. Obviously, this would need a market-wide pullback. Or 1.67 if you're anticipating a higher low here. Would be quite juicy in my view. Quite juicy. Oh, 4-hour bearish divergence. Look at this here as well. So set some alerts here. 1.68. Other than that, I'm not really interested in chasing it. Not at all. Oh, look at ETH. Wow. See what I mean? 4-hour bear div, poof, gone. That's why I'm not interested in shorting it. What do you think about Tau? I just entered, so I don't know if it's already discussed about it. I'm not gonna cover many charts because it's a macro stream, but let's do Tau since I already answered a few requests, and if I forgot anything, just let me know on the fundamentals. For me, Tau is in a pretty big range, right? These range highs here. And these range lows here, 230. I would be interested in a long-term bag on Tau here. Did we have a 4-hour bear div? Let's see. Oh no, that's cheeky. Lower time frame. I'm still interested in this 354 area, especially if it comes in line with those levels for others and total 3 that we discussed. But other than that, what triggers do we have here? Not much. Not in my swing zone, personally. And look at this. I mean, BTC and ETH made new highs, and altcoins just reversed half of the drop they had since their July 22nd highs. Altcoins remain weak. What is your thoughts on S&P? You mean like S&P 500? I still think that at some point we will get this retest here. Inevitable in my view. Previous all-time high area. This is a clear buy when it comes because this will hold. And remember the September dip we talked about, right? The lowest returns on the S&P 500 always in September. So I do think this is still possible. I don't really like to use divergences as much for stock markets, but we have some form of monthly diff here as well. So we'll see how that unfolds. But yeah, previous all-time high retest is pretty solid. Pretty solid. Yeah, if we get that September dip, I think it's possible we get a bit of a bigger pullback in the crypto market as well, which is not catastrophic. I mean, crypto markets have been up only basically for a few months now, so it's always possible to get a more decent pullback. Nasdaq almost all-time high. Oh man, you know where we caught Nasdaq? Look at this. This was our buy zone for Nasdaq in April. Absolutely wild. 44%. Crazy. Nasdaq as well. Previous all-time high retest. I think we can move this a bit higher. If you get this in September. These previous all-time high retests for stock markets rarely fail. This would be very healthy, actually. Maybe it can rise a bit more and then come down for this level. But if you get this in September, I think it will be for buying. How do we know when to buy the dip in September? Well, we will get our levels hopefully for the S&P 500 or for several indexes that we discuss. We will have RSI confluence, right? We see, for example, bullish divergences forming around our key levels. We know it's a good time to at least buy for short term. For long term, I mean, my opinion doesn't change, right? We're going into the third, fourth year of this cycle. I think we will be able to buy Bitcoin way lower next year, maybe end of next year. That's where I want to bid more heavily. But in the meantime, there will be tons of opportunities to bid. Maybe not for a long-term hold, but yeah, for making profits, absolutely. I think long-term, only Bitcoin is something that's gonna keep thriving because of rising inflation. I think that 401k law passed by Trump is something very, very bullish for something like Bitcoin long-term. Because I've shared the write-up in my corner today. The reason why these markets basically are designed to go up only is rising inflation, right? And inflation basically decreases the purchasing power of our fiat currency. And if you have an asset that's gained a lot of reputation from this cycle with all institutions accumulating it and buying it, and that has a finished supply, I mean, what better asset do you want as a hedge against inflation, right? That doesn't mean that it becomes completely independent on financial markets. Of course, Bitcoin will have its financial markets. It will go up and it will go down. And it can as well drop 40-50% at some point if we get a bear market on global markets. But long term, I think BTC is it's a no-brainer. If we ever get the bear market again, if we have the opportunity to accumulate cheap Bitcoin, you do it. You absolutely do it. I think the 4-year cycle is no more. I don't know, man. I still believe in financial cycles, to be honest. Maybe they won't be as harsh as in previous cycles. Like, I don't expect a 75% drop on Bitcoin. But financial markets exist, and they will exist for Bitcoin as well. Just look what Bitcoin did on this little dip on the S&P 500 and everything else. I mean, this led to a 15% drop in ETH. Remember that. And the correction are very normal in the stock markets as well. And that will influence speculative assets too. And remember one thing, a lot of this Bitcoin is accumulated by corporations that are not doing well financially. Right, so if they have to liquidate their balance sheet at some point during a harsher bear market, they will sell their Bitcoin, right? So that can also increase the sell pressure. So I wouldn't say something like we won't have another bear market for BTC. I think that's not entirely correct. We can say we can have softer bear markets. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. But I still do believe that we will have a bear market for crypto as well. But that will just be another opportunity to buy. Now, do we have the cycle top behind us? Are we still going to experience it by the end of this year? That's hard to tell, you know what I mean? It's not super important. Yeah. All right, guys, let's wrap it up. I think we had a 75-minute stream. That's been pretty good. We discussed a lot of things. I discussed many levels. So let me know on the fundamentals if you have more questions. Thank you for attending as always. And let me know on the fundamentals if you need to discuss anything. So stay safe trading and take care, guys. Cheers.